I think that for one thing, the expense of college keeps some people out of it. And then we're also finding that a lot of the jobs don't require that. I think you'll probably be looking at, like what we just mentioned earlier, a constant. If anybody thinks that, their education is over when they graduate, they're very wrong.
Welcome to this edition of the Whole Truth Podcast. Today, we have a special guest, Mr. Stephen Blair Orme, I think is your official full name. But Mr. Orme to me, my ag teacher, FFA Advisor for several years. And just wanted to bring you in here. Only been asking for this for like 2.5 years. But now that you're retired, you finally agreed to it. So kind of tell us a little bit, how many years you taught and then what your new role is with the school system right now.
Well, as Bob said, my name is Blair Orme, and I'm married to Natasha. I have 3 wonderful children, Justin, Callista, and Alex. They're all married and have grandchildren at this point, and I myself have always been a resident of Rush County and feel like this is a great place to not only raise kids, but a community that cares and has a lot going.
How many grandkids you got?
8.
I was going to put you on the spot, see if you remembered or not. I was trying to count them for you there for a second. So what is your new role now with the school since you retired?
Well, there's a lot of different ways to look at the word retirement. I think it's important to be, no matter what you're doing, you want people to know who you are rather than what you have been. The ag position that I had started in 1989, and then, as you mentioned, I retired from that position in July, and now I am a part-time career coach at Rushville Consolidated High School.
So there's going to be people that listen to this and watch this. And I mean, like, one thing I do, we talk a lot about like our legacy. Like, I want to be super intentional. Like, what does my legacy look like? And to me, teachers have one of the biggest opportunities to make a massive impact because, and fortunately you're one of them teachers that did it for the right reasons. We've all had teachers that mailed it in. They really just did it for a paycheck. But I mean, the amount of effort that you put and time that you put into the FFA outside of just the ag classes, and then, speaking of your lovely bride, like the amount of sacrifices and your kids made for you to be around, like, it means a lot to me. Like, your imprint is in this business just for what you did for me as an FFA student. So I guess just kind of put you on a spot here, like talk about some of your, and I know you're probably going to watch how you answer this, but some of your achievements as an FFA advisor, because the people that understand the FFA and all that, like we've had a lot of state officers come from Rushville. And, I remember whenever I was in school, like we were becoming, this is going to sound arrogant, a powerhouse with stuff, but it just continued to grow even 20 years later, so, because, I would meet people in my job and they're like, you're from Rushville. Like, you guys have one of the best FFA programs. So I guess, talk a little bit about that. Cause I know you're not going to take much credit cause you're a humble guy, but you're a huge part of that.
Well, I think one of the first things that, if you're going to try to have a success, is obviously you have to build relationships and you have to surround yourself with good people. And I think that's one thing that we were able to do in the agricultural department, along with the FFA, is to surround yourself with some really outstanding people, because you're going to do very few things alone, and you need a support cast that's going to make that happen. So I think that's one of the first things that we were able to do. I think the next thing with FFA especially, the I'm trying to think what we actually call it. The mission statement is premier leadership, personal growth, and career success. Well, it's amazing how we talk about leadership all the time, but how do you actually teach it? And a lot of that is the way you teach it is by modeling it. So I think the next step was to model leadership, and it was to don't expect anything out of the kids that you don't model yourself or you don't do yourself. So it was important to be one step ahead of them and saying, if I can do this, you can do this. But I never expected students to do anything that I wasn't willing to do myself. And if that meant we were setting up chairs for a program or activity, then I was setting up chairs with them. And if we were doing something where your hands were getting dirty, my hands were getting dirty with them. And I think that's one of the areas that we had to begin with. And I think from that, you really have to do a lot of self-awareness, and you got to really look at training individuals. And I think a lot of people think, well, that's not me, I am who I am. Well, that's not true. You are who you are because of your influences. And you got to want to be a better person. And the only way you're going to do that is to work at that on a daily basis, whether that be putting a goal on your mirror that says, I'm going to try to achieve this, or, you're reading some books by Maxwell or whoever it might be. You have to make an effort to change. And that's especially true at the high school level. These students, kids, have to recognize some of their skills and abilities, and then it's up to us to maximize them and to bring those out and allow them to blossom and find out who they really are.
Man, that was that was good. And I guess my next question is how do you do that? Because I'm in a role as leading a company that really anybody that cares about the future of our kids, our team, the kids in the high school is you literally have to they have to see that. Because as if it was just you trying to lead the Rushville FFA for the last 35 years, you could only taught one or two coaching teams, not been successful in multiple ones, so how do you get kids to realize their potential, and what did you do to, because looking back, it's truly amazing when you run into an FFA kid, and when you talk to them, because they're not doing this all the time like a lot of the kids are. They can look you in the eyes and shake your hand. So I guess how did you cultivate that?
Well, to back up a little bit, I want to say or give a little shout out to Sammy DeLay, Carly Yeager, and Jessica Roberts, who are now running the program. And I think they're doing a great job. And that's just another example of people continuing that legacy that is at Rushville.
Right.
As far as how do you do that, I think that it's got to start with relationships. And you have to build relationships. And the only way you're going to build relationships is with trust. Mm-hmm. And trust is the biggest example that must be in place if you're going to do that. And I think you have to learn to relate. I think you have to show a high level of empathy. You have to remember people when no one else is remembering them. And you have to look for ways to help them see I guess we want to say God don't make no junk.
Right.
Okay. Everybody has a talent. Everybody has a skill. And you just have to work to bring that out in them so that they build confidence in themselves and see that they're capable of it. Technically, FFA, we say it's a student-led organization. So it's probably one of the best in letting kids make mistakes, learn from them, and then move on. And then grow from that experience. And, we all know that's another example too. If it don't kill you, it will make you stronger. And I think that another aspect of at least the agriculture and FFA program is typically you're going to have those kids for 4 or 5 years. So if you consider that they're only 14, 15 years old when you start with them, and they're 18 years old when they graduate, that is a huge percentage of their life at that point. And those are also years that they're developing in so many ways. So a high school teacher has a huge role in who these people are becoming, which is also true of my new position with career counseling. This is when, they're really, whether we like it or not, is when they've got to start making choices as to what maybe they're going to do in their future.
Right. Well, I mean, you're exactly right when you talk about just people in the maturity or the age the kids grow up. I mean, there is a lot to that. And, another thing that I always enjoy on the state FFA retiring officer speeches at state convention, they're always talking about some kind of failure, like they started judging or, and they did horrible and, or they did the creed speaking contest and they couldn't remember half the words their freshman year, and then now they just won the state contest, and I kind of chuckled at speaking of the creed contest. I chuckled, many moons ago, like 22, 23 years ago. I remember me and Todd Cameron sat back there with our dads at where did we have that at, Mr. Orme? It's in the 201 building now, but they used to cater right there.
Winkerbees?
Yes. And me and Todd sat there and we repeated the creed the entire time. That I think it was all girls that did it that year. For some reason, I remember like Liz Weaver, I think Natalie Hommeyer was a couple of them that did it. And me and Todd sat there and we recited it word for word while they were doing it. And some of the freshmen were struggling with it, and I thought our dads were going to kick our butts because they were both like, why aren't you guys up there doing it? And we were cool freshmen, like we were boys, we didn't do that. But, there's just, like I said, there's a lot of development. And one thing that I've come to realize lately is like, I really feel like, and this is why I'm excited to have Jonathan Holes back on our team. Like, I really feel called to make sure I'm leading these young men that are under me, because we have the most problems in this country would be fixed, in my opinion, if men would step up and lead, and love their kids, love their spouse, stay faithful to their spouse, and really worry about them and not kind of their childish stuff. So that's why I appreciate what you've done in the FFA, and I appreciate you giving the girls a shout out that took over, because I know you want nothing but success for the program. I know you want some time, you want to enjoy retirement or working a little less, which you should. You got 8 grandbabies and whatnot, but absolutely, like that's. And what I love the most about it is the group. Like Jessica stepped up to help. Like, and there's other community members that want the same thing, want to help move the ball forward, with them. So what is, and I know you probably won't want to answer this, what is one of your bigger success stories in like FFA, or I don't know, maybe like, when did you feel like you really got it going, that first state officer or something like that? Like any of them stories to share?
That's a really difficult question. And again, I think that you could easily, I don't know that you really credit any single individual situation that occurred. I think it was just rolling up your sleeves and hard work, a lot of time, a lot of effort, which is always true of most success stories. And I think once people saw the importance of the program and how it could impact them is really important. I think probably as an ag teacher, one of the things that I found most rewarding was being able to go to a student's open house. And people have asked me how many I went to, and I'm honestly going to say probably over 500. Right. If a student asked me to come to their graduation party, I tried very hard. Didn't make them all, obviously, but tried very hard to go. And almost everybody decorates at these open houses. And what meant more to me was when I would go and there would be a table filled with FFA memorabilia. And it's like, that's how I knew we had found success, is when the kids found success. And I'm not saying success is a plaque, don't get me wrong, but success is the impact that the organization had on that student. Right.
I mean, there's a guy that's really big in the roofing space, and I shared a picture of the calves on Facebook, and he commented, 4-H FFA taught me so much. And I was like, oh, wow. I mean, that guy runs one of the largest roofing companies out west that I know of, So, I mean, that's cool to see, to see that.
There's a movie several years ago where I don't remember the name of the movie, but there was a plaque on the wall, and it said, you make the whatever doesn't make you.
Right.
And I think that's very true. Bob Hoel makes the FFA. The FFA doesn't make Bob Hoel.
Right.
It's still all about that particular individual that put that coat on.
Right.
The coat didn't make them whatever they became. And then the people then impacted that individual with that coat on. And that's what made the difference.
Well, and like I sit there and I reflect, like I started livestock judging with Carl Hilton when I was in like third grade, which is crazy. And then he had to start giving reasons. And now looking back, I realized the people I was giving reasons to were the guys that own the cattle or own the sheep. And I think what a lot of people know this, you just don't realize it. But like it takes a ton of volunteers. It takes a lot of behind the scenes to be successful. Like, I mean, looking back, how many people did it take to set up, that judging event? The judges, the people scoring the cards and all that. And all of them were pretty much volunteers. Like it wasn't, a paid staff. And, I look at it like 4-H, like the amount of people that Phil Dalrymple that was always in the ring helping when I showed. Them kind of people that, they truly did it for the love of, it. And now I get it with my kids starting to show, like, it's kind of crazy sometimes to drag a trailer and a couple calves and 3 young kids to a show, but it's like what they're going to get out of it, what they're going to remember, is completely worth it to me. And, it's ironic you bring up, open houses and books, because I still have the book that you gave me, and it's a short read by John Maxwell. It's really big words, so it's easier for me to read. But like, I probably read that thing 50 times, and I always think, yep, Mr. Orme gave me that book. And you used to talk about reading books when I was in high school, and I hated reading. Now I read every opportunity if you recommend a book, like I'm buying it, I'm downloading it on audio, because truly to me that's the easiest way to be mentored by a John Maxwell or a Dale Carnegie or a lot of different people.
Well, you're not going to learn from yourself,
right?
And there's that saying out there, God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. The only way you're going to actually grow as an individual is either be listening to someone else or to be reading from somewhere else. But you're probably not going to close a door and just somehow gather useful information that's going to make you an individual of greater capacity or whatever it may be from yourself. Just isn't going to happen.
So what is, give me, maybe one of your favorite books that you think you've got the most out of.
Well, I think John Wooden, anything from him is really good. He's probably one of the few people that doesn't have a backstory where after they wrote the book, then they tried to come out and say, well, that person was a terrible individual. Still yet to find too many people that will say anything bad about that man. And again, he won all those national championships, but that's, again, when you talk about legacy, that's not really the legacy he left. The legacy he left is the way he impacted those players, whether they won the championship or not. I think the championships just gave him the platform and then the respect, and then he was able to use that. But I think he's obviously one of the top people that ever coached, and of course John C. Maxwell has a lot of books out there. And I'm like you, if you are listening to someone and they say, hey, you should really read this book, I'm going to take a look at that. And then obviously the Bible and the verses in it are nothing but things that will help you grow as an individual.
What and that's kind of you brought up John Wood, and that's kind of cool because I guess that's one thing I've probably learned more in the last few years of being a leader is like I've got to coach. Really, I'm just a coach, and maybe I don't know if you ever looked at that being a teacher, if you ever felt like, what do the good coaches do? Because there has to be a level of respect from a teacher or from a boss, but you said it early, empathy. They have to know that you care and you love them, because unfortunately we've all had to have hard conversations with people that there has to be that trust level first, and nothing means more to me than here in the last couple months I've had two people that don't work here anymore that's reached out to me for some advice and some help. And that meant a lot to me because I don't want people to think that just because you don't work here anymore, that I don't love you, I don't like you. Sometimes seasons end and I'm completely fine with that, but I don't want to be that guy. Oh, they're not making me money, he can't do anything for me, I'm not answering that guy, kind of thing. So I guess that's one thing that I've probably taken away a lot here in the last couple of years is like coaching. Is there any lessons maybe that something that you got out of a John Wooden book that you implemented, you felt like was good?
Well, that's a good question. I think those are also really books that you can revisit, just like the Bible. You go back and you read something, and you get something out of it that day very different than what you did when you read it 5 years ago.
Yep.
And I think that's just how life works, because that means you're growing, and it means you're being impacted differently than you were the last time you read that passage or the last time you looked at what that said, and then it comes up with a whole new application. And a lot of times that application is different than the way you used it before, but that's because the person you're using it on is different. And I think that's my role in agriculture and FFA, and my role as a career coach. With career coaching, one thing that I've learned is it's not linear at all. Almost every single situation is different. So there is no blanket method of impacting students. There's no just surefire, this is going to work. So with anything that you're reading or anything, you've got to figure out how to apply it, to that individual. And I think that's what sets some people apart from others is just you got to be able to read the room. You got to be able to read the individual, and not everybody has that gift. Some people just don't see that. They want to take their way of doing it and just force feed it, and you can't do that. You've got to look at each situation individually.
So earlier we were talking a little bit before we started recording about like the Gen X's, the millennials, all that kind of, the generations. What are you seeing, so what generation are we even in right now technically?
Good question.
Are we technically in Gen X?
Well, as far as at the high school
yes,
level,
I guess more.
Or Gen Z. Yeah, Gen Z, I think, is the kids right now.
So what's it? So it was millennial, Gen X, now Gen Z?
Sounds right.
What are you seeing different there? Because, and I'm gonna butcher which generation this is, but I've studied some leadership stuff, and Dave Ramsey's talked about it a lot. There's a generation now that's out there, and it's not the newest one, but they would actually they're not as concerned about how much money they make at work. They're more concerned about what kind of impact. Now, granted, everybody's got to make money, so that's how they pay bills, But maybe it's Gen X. Maybe they are. Adam, are you considered a Gen X or a millennial? You're a millennial. Okay, but you're at the end of the millennials, though, right?
Yeah, between millennials and Gen Z.
Okay, so it's Gen Z, then Gen...
Yeah, according to this, Gen Z starts in 95, and millennials is 80 to 94.
And then Gen X is what we're on now?
Any person born after 2013 is Generation Alpha.
Okay, Generation Alpha. Okay. So I guess talk a little bit as a career coach, and I mean you already seen it being an ag teacher, like the differences in the generations, maybe over the years.
Well, I was at a teacher meeting or something many years ago, and I think this is fairly true to be said. You have the same problems, you just have new faces, or you have the same problems, you just have new technology. So a lot of the things that you deal with in rearing children, it's the same. It's the same. What do I want to say here? You're treating the symptoms and not the illness. Saying, the illness is the same. The same things that cause the problems they're not different. It's just the instruments that they utilize, such as cell phones or computers or whatever, has changed. So I think that the way to deal with them is still no different than what you did 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. You're just working with different instruments that cause those problems.
So you're saying we should still be beating kids? Is that what you're saying?
I did not say that, and hopefully, Bob, that will be cut out of the podcast. So
don't cut anything out of here. Oh shoot!
I'm saying that we still have to have a nucleus of a good family, and we have to have people who care, people that hold firm in their expectations in their classroom or whatever they're doing, and are working hard to get results, and that doesn't change.
Yeah, and I mean, I know you've seen it at school, like, there's got to be a good family, good parenting at home. Like, I get that. One thing that I always find amazing, though, is like you're really, really, really successful people. A lot of them, I mean, they come from like a lot of like brokenness. And I mean, we all come from brokenness because we live in a broken world, you know. But I was just talking to a friend and a mentor of mine, and he was talking about this billionaire that he knows that grew up on dirt floors. And he was my age, which is crazy to think that somebody my age grew up on dirt floors, you know. But just, you know, them challenges make us, you know, who we are, shape us, you know, into what we do. So I guess I'm gonna ask you to share, like, you know, how did you end up teaching? Like, you know, what drove you down that path?
Well, we'll take this down my new role as well, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
When it comes to success, again, I think we live in a world that has many different avenues to find it. Mm-hmm. So when we talk about how does someone end up in a career, your number one influencer is probably going to be parents. Your second is going to be teachers and counselors. Your third is your peers. But we also have to look at and think about, you know, how these connections are made to take you from point A to point B. And again, they're not the same for anybody. And so for me, you know, I was heavily influenced by my ag teacher, Mr. Breischerber, and I then majored in ag education, and I was able to get that position and stay in it for 35 years. A lot of people will change careers over the years. One thing that we're looking at right now is only about 52% of people will go to college after graduation. We're getting ready to go to a new diploma system here in Indiana. And then of those 52%, we know that they won't all graduate. Then we also know that lots of jobs or careers don't require a college education. So I think that the high school world is trying to maybe become a little more specialized in their course offerings. Mr. Cook and others are working to diversify the offerings so that people can have more skills when they graduate, which I think is going to be important as we move into the future years. There's some crazy statistics out there how technology is moving faster now than it ever has. And you know what the world's going to look like, you know, 40 years from now when these kids would be wrapping up their potential careers. I mean, it could be so different than what we have right now. A lot of careers aren't even invented yet,
right,
that they are going to see in their lifetime. So
that's always crazy, because I heard a statistic, and I can't remember what it was, but that is crazy on like what you just said there, where there's so many careers that aren't even invented that high school kids are going to have the opportunity, that are going to do.
Well, and you know, another saying out there is we've got to find the best version of you. You know, I think that's what we have to look for when these kids are graduating. You know, we got to get the best version of them ready to do whatever they're going to do. I mean, that's the ultimate goal. But yeah, they're gonna see a huge diversity in careers and things that they can be involved in, and they've got to be prepared probably to make multiple changes, not necessarily in jobs, but in maybe even in the same job. They may be trained multiple times over 20 years, 30 years, you know. When I started teaching, we didn't even have computers in the classroom. You know, they still took attendance paper, and now look at where we are. And you have to keep up with that or you're going to get lost. And so this group of kids that are coming up, you know, there'll be multiple changes in their work environment over their years of being in the workforce.
So you said 52% of kids are going to college. Do you know, like, when did that start dropping off, or do you know what the peak was? Because, I mean, I'll be honest, when I was in school, I felt like if you weren't planning on going to a university, the counselors just treated you like dirt. Like, just like, oh, you're just not, I don't know. It was like, oh, you're going to I went to a community college. Oh, you're going to the community. I don't know. It was just like your university was shoved down your throat so hard. And I mean, it was my dad. It was like, hey, just go get 2-year degree and then decide if you want more education, you know? So I completely agree with what you say on, like, you know, your parents are your biggest influence. But the crazy thing for me is, like, I had an instinct, a gut instinct that I wanted to do construction management, and I have zero idea where that came from. Like, because I was never really around construction, you know, but it was just, I really wanted to do that. My dad convinced me to get a different degree because he was worried I'd go do like road construction, and he said he wanted to make sure I had a family life, you know. So do you know the statistics of like what it used to be or anything?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say we have a great group of counselors at the high school.
Right.
And they can't be everything to everybody.
Right.
And I think sometimes kids think that they can be. I also think that if I'm a high schooler, a lot of them want to be able to say, well, I'm going to go to college,
right.
You know? I think there's a, I'm trying to think how to say it, but I mean, there's a higher status
right.
if I say I'm going to college rather than saying I want to work for Bob Hoel.
Right.
And I don't mean that disrespectfully at all. But I also think that's changing. I think that, for one thing, the expense of college keeps some people out of it. And then we're also finding that a lot of the jobs don't require that. I think you'll probably be looking at, like what we just mentioned earlier, a constant. If anybody thinks that, you know, their education is over when they graduate, they're very wrong, because they're going to have to constantly be going to workshops and things to keep them updated on the latest trends. So the number has been falling for about 10 years, though.
Okay.
For people going to college.
Well, and, you know, and also if you look at it, like, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. Like, you got to be willing to grow. Like, if you want to grow in your career, you want to grow in your income, then yes, you absolutely got to be able to continue to go to conferences, learn the new trends. You know, I mean, me and Adam were just having this conversation yesterday on some things on, you know, marketing. And, yeah, I mean, it's just, you know, I do finally feel like that pendulum has swung where it's not looked down upon that if you don't go to college. And like I said, like, if you have the financial resources to go, but like one thing that breaks my heart is, like, you know, and we're getting past this now that me and Emily's getting a little older, but you watch so many girls that would go get $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 in student loan debt, have a job for 2 years, get married, have a kid a year or two later, and want to stay home with that kid to be a stay-at-home mom, but they're so strapped in debt that they, you know, they really financially can't, you know. And Emily tells a story that she felt like when she was in high school, she went to Ivy Tech, that she was looked down upon by some of her peers. And once again, you said that's a determining factor of what you do, because she did stay at Ivy, you know, she did stay at Ivy Tech and didn't go to IU or Purdue. And I tell kids all the time, if you want to be a doctor, please go to college, because if you're going to work on me, I want to make sure, you know, I just want to be a voice to kids that you don't have to go to college. And I hopefully we're getting away from this, because like 10, 15 years ago, it was like people would go to college and be like, oh, hey, I've got a college degree, Bob, so you need to pay me X amount of dollars. And, that's the only bad thing is some people don't understand that you're only worth as much to an employer, a certain amount to an employer. It really doesn't matter how many degrees that you have. Like, Dave Ramsey says this, your pay raise is effective when you are. Like, as a business owner, if you come to me that I can do more or I can do higher level stuff, then you're worth more money, and in our business, we cultivate that growth. We're reading books as a team, that kind of stuff, because I tell people when they come here, I want you to want to grow. I mean, I was just with one of our sales guys last night, and I seen his pay stub. He made $113,000 last year. No college education, was working in a factory for $17 an hour a couple years ago before he started working here. So like, it's changed his life, and that's what gets me excited, like to be able to mentor them kind of guys, and girls, it's just, to me, that's what the leadership, that's what the growing, is about for us. So what is your future plans? I mean, I know Mr. Cook I know you won't tell me if this is your only year doing this, but kind of what do you think, the next few years looks like for Mr. Orme?
Well, I think the career coaching definitely has a place in the high school. We're really just getting it off the ground this year. It's through a grant. So
this is the first year they've had a career coach then?
That is correct.
Okay, go ahead.
It is through a grant, and Mr. Cook has given me a lot of flexibility in trying to develop this program and trying to get it to work. And then Mrs. Stoneman and Mrs. Hornsby have been really good about helping me find different activities that will help to develop the career commons, as it's called. And so I think it's something that's going to grow. It's going to have a place in the school, especially as we move towards this new diploma that will affect the 8th graders now. They're the first class, I believe, that will fall under this new diploma. The new diploma has a lot of technical training to it, along with the Core 40 college aspect of it. I think on the state level, they're wanting people to actually graduate with skills rather than just graduate. If they're going to go into the workforce, right. Rather, you're going to look at more certificates and things like that someone can graduate with. So I think it's something that's important, and I think it's something we can continue to work on, and I hope I can be a part of that.
Awesome. Well, as we wrap up here, I just want to thank you for, the 35 years of service that you did for the Rushville FFA. I mean, you impacted a lot of lives. You're a big impact in my life, my siblings' lives, and like I said earlier, like your legacy lives. Your legacy is touched by you've touched so many lives that truly, your legacy has touched tens of thousands of people, at a minimum, because I know there's been several, the Coon girls that's went on to be ag teachers, and Quinn Wicker, I think, also, and I know I'm forgetting some because I'm pulling this out of the air, but like the impact that you've made, your willingness to always support us, reach out, your corny jokes, every once in a while. But, from me, just, I want to take this time, to thank you for coming on here, because I love leadership. I love success. And at the end of the day, it's the same. There's not a silver bullet. There really isn't. Every day you got to get up. Every day you got to choose to love your wife. You got to choose to love your team. You got to choose to love the kids, and kids are harder to choose to love some days because the way they act, but in the grand scheme that you've done that. So just thank you from us. I'll let you close with any Mr. Orme wisdom?
Well, and I think I'm stealing this from someone else, but what's really original at this point in life. But I think someone once said, "How do you want to be remembered?" And they said just that. I just want to be remembered.
Right.
And I think that's a good way of putting it. I hope I can just be remembered as someone that had a positive impact in this community. Hope I still can.
Absolutely.
Keep having that impact and to be remembered.
Thank you.